And I think we are live. Just check in on the Facebook group to see if it's posted, and here we are. All right, then. Hey, guys, and welcome back to The Outer Rim. My name is Gabe, and today, with the help of a friend, I will be talking about the latest episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And here today is Michael Hoover from the A Certain Point of View podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, man. This is going to be fun.
Yes. There are many thoughts and feelings about this one. So just kind of without preamble, we'll just dive right into it. Again, this one is directed by Deborah Chow. It's part 3. It's written by Joby Harold, Hannah Friedman, Hossein Amini, and Stuart Beatty, which is a lot of people for 40 minutes of TV. But most importantly, Zach Braff shows up playing a giant loyalist mole, which, yeah, I like it.
What's his name? Freck.
Is that what his name is?
Yeah. Freck the mole.
He was fun. Right up until he betrayed them, but you can't have everything. All right, man. So I probably do want to get some brief thoughts from you as far as what your feelings are on the first 2 episodes have been kind of coming into this one.
Okay, so before this episode, I have been one of the ones that has just absolutely been on board with this show. I'm loving it so far. Episode 1, honestly, is one of my favorite Star Wars Disney Plus episodes so far. I would go that far. It really is. It did everything I've needed it to do. For me personally, I know I know there's some differences of opinion, but but for me personally, it did really balance character and plot movement and pacing and all that really, really well. Like so far, the first 2 specifically have done that for me, and I've been invested in this show. I love seeing it's hard to see Obi-Wan in this place. It definitely is reminiscent of Luke from The Last Jedi. It's hard to not think about it. But it's hard to see him like this in such a low place, and I think they're doing a really good job of showing us that, and kind of going. I don't know. I've loved that aspect. I've loved that Leia was such a surprise, and I love the young actress that plays her, Vivian Lyra. I'm forgetting her last name. Yeah, but
I am deeping it right now.
She has been Vivian Lyra Blair. She has been wonderful. I have absolutely loved every second that she's been on screen, except with the exception of the chase. The chase on Alderaan specifically bothered me the most.
They should have brought in the stunt person for that one.
Yeah, or just edited it better. But, I have my qualms here and there for sure. This is not a perfect show, and I understand certain criticisms and all that. But I'm not going to lie, man. This show has really been doing it for me. I've absolutely loved it. So that's my point of view so far. So.
Well,
how about you? How do you?
Yeah, if you didn't watch last week's review, I am kind of the opposite. It's fine. It's fine. It's a show. Things happen. I'm not going to get into all the problems I had last week. A lot of them will kind of reoccur here, but I just have not been feeling it either from a storytelling or filmmaking perspective. It's just not what I want from Star Wars, and I'm not even talking about just like what I expected, but just like the level of quality I want from a Star Wars. It just wasn't there. So kind of moving into this episode specifically, how are you feeling?
Again, I loved it. So this one, I think I like this one better than episode 2. Actually, okay. I really liked episode 2. Loved the planet that we were on and all that. But I didn't find the character stuff in it to be quite as gripping. I loved there was a bunch of things in this episode. Listen, and when I talk about this stuff, I mean, I'm not an expert in filmmaking or anything like that. I feel like I have a pretty good eye, at least for very good direction. I feel like I can recognize certain things, but I don't have a trained eye. I did not go to school for this stuff or anything like this. I'm just going by how it hit me when I watched it. And for me, when I watched this episode, it starts off just really briskly paced and like we see that it's like goes back and forth between showing, I think it shows Obi-Wan doing stuff, and then it goes right back really quickly to showing Vader being put together, and like really back and forth. It's just at this kind of brisk pace at the beginning, and it's like I feel like something's gonna happen in this episode, and I kind of felt that from the get-go. And then there's that whole middle section of the episode where Obi-Wan and Leia are just wandering on this planet, and in the hills of California, what I imagine. And
I mean, via the volume, but yes.
Right. It kind of looked, there were some shots that did look like they were on location. Would you agree?
I think there were like I think most of it was volume, but there were a couple like
there was a few
bit
shots
bigger they can get. Yeah.
There was a few shots. I was like, that seems way more. That seems live for me. But I did think I have been on the opposite side of you on a lot of things on this show. But really, I feel like Deborah Chow has used the volume much better than some of the people like from the Book of Boba Fett and even Mando. I've actually thought that like when she in these episodes of Obi-Wan, most of the time I don't feel the volume a lot. I don't feel like they're in a small room. I understand. I heard your complaints about like the lighting and stuff last week, and that makes total sense. I get that.
I'm surprised I haven't driven you out of our spoiler chat with all my complaints.
I just mute it sometimes, but then I come back. No, I just I've really enjoyed it, and I just like to just enjoy it, and so anyway, this episode. I really enjoyed the Obi-Wan and Leia wandering, and they had a couple of conversations, and we're just kind of seeing Obi-Wan is now so much more cynical. Like he's so cynical, and Leia is Leia, and it's this dichotomy here, and I really love how they're doing that through the conversation, and that conversation on Freck's whatever you want to call it, speeder truck, where they were talking about Leia's mom, where they were talking about Padme. I thought that was such a beautiful part. I really like just seeing stormtroopers. Like I feel like they're just like 9 to 5 stormtroopers. They're just clocking in, clocking out. Their armor is just dirty and like. I like seeing that stuff, that side of the Empire, and
also just their relationship with Freck, with like, yes, man.
Yeah, I like seeing like Freck is just an Imperial loyalist, and he's just like he's a citizen that agrees with the Empire, and he has like a Imperial, an Imperial flag on his truck thing, and I like seeing that. That's kind of cool world building stuff, and then man, go ahead.
I just kind of jump on there because I had something to say about that. I do love that a lot of some of these shows are showing that some normal people are just like they're really okay with what the Empire is doing. Like, and you imagine that particularly, not every planet got the worst of the Empire's treatment. So sometimes just we had a really rough time, and these guys came and they made everything peaceful again. So I'm cool with them. And it doesn't. I feel like I like it when it just presents that and doesn't like pass judgment. It's just someone with a very small world. This is their perspective on how their experience is. Yeah. I just find that very interesting and true to life. Even the worst communist regimes had their fans.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, and they have to for something like that to work for as long as it did. It has to have citizens that believe in it, and the Bad Batch explored that really well too. The stormtroopers coming in, they valued loyal stormtroopers who choose to come serve rather like more than clones who are programmed to, and those like that elite squad that come up in the show. That one guy was talking about, the Empire is feeding me and they're paying me, and the Republic never did that for me, and like I just like seeing that side of things. Really interesting.
Did you read Lost Stars?
Not yet. It's on my bookshelf right over here, but I haven't read it yet.
There's a main character who's kind of exactly in that position. It's really fascinating.
Oh, yeah. I love that stuff. I think it's great. And I think the show is doing a good job of that. And really, like a lot of the shows right now, I like that. Yeah, and then like, dude, obviously the Vader stuff, man. I know we're going to differ on some of this, but I loved the way that or all of it. I love the way that Vader was portrayed, man. I loved between this and Rebels, I think he's actually pretty terrifying in Rebels. Between this and Rebels, and then and Rogue One, we're seeing some truly terrifying Vader. And for me, like when he's just walking down the middle of that street and he's just like trying to draw Obi-Wan out, and he force chokes this guy, and then his kid runs out and is like, "Dad," and he force chokes the kid back into the wall, and then he snaps his neck with the force, and it's terrifying. Like, I was genuinely
That was the
terrified.
Vader part I liked.
Okay, I'm glad you liked that. I honestly, man, that part was just like, I was sitting here by myself at 2:00 in the morning watching, and I'm just like, oh God, I am terrified, and I love that. I just, you watch these the older movies now, and I know he was probably more scary back then, but you watch some of it now and it's not super scary. Vader isn't, and Palpatine is, but Vader isn't.
I think Irvin Kershner made him super scary.
Agreed. Of the
Empire.
3 movies, he was scariest in that movie for sure. When he's like throwing that stuff on the wall at Luke, and that,
or just like comes out of the darkness looming over Luke.
So good.
That shot is just give me nightmares.
Yeah, so good. But man, I loved it. I actually loved the fight. I know it wasn't our full on big showdown with the two of them. I'm fully expecting a second showdown. To me, this was a vengeful Vader facing a broken man that was a shell of himself. It's not Obi-Wan. This is broken Ben. And I think Vader noticed that. Like, when I was watching, the reason why I kind of felt like he could get Ben through the flames if he wanted to. I kind of felt like he was just like, this is not what I wanted. Like, this is really sad to me. Like, I kind of want to face him when he's Obi-Wan again. Like, because he even did that with Luke in the original trilogy. He was like, oh, too easy. And I feel like he wants that, and I feel like I kind of took it as he is definitely like, he's thinking, this is not the man that I remember. What has happened to this man? And
he's gonna sit him down. What are you doing with your life, man?
Yeah.
Come on, this is so disappointing.
I wanted a real rematch here. And man, when he dragged him through the fire, I was just like, man, this is I loved it. And I know I'm fully expecting, obviously I'm expecting a lot of character stuff with Obi-Wan as the show goes on, and another showdown, and I think it's going to be really good. I'm expecting it, and I'm sure you're expecting it to be great.
Yeah. Well, I was planning to go back to some positives before we talked about Vader, but you brought it up, so here we are. Honestly, like, I don't even mind. Well, I can't say that. I have a central problem with the notion of Vader and Obi-Wan meeting between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. I feel like the implication of all their dialogue and interaction is, well, essentially it's summed up in the line, when I left, I was but the learner, now I'm the master. Like, I feel like their relationship should have ended with the Revenge of the Sith, and then they meet together in A New Hope, and they clash, and it plays out the way it does. And I feel like any interaction between them kind of cheapens that one. So just automatically, when I heard Hayden Christensen was cast as Darth Vader, everyone was going, yes, I was doing like the Vader no scream, just because I don't want to see it. But putting that aside, I'm here for story. I'm here. I like watching good things. So even if I think the larger lore is injured, I'm still willing to say that, in isolation, they can create a good sequence between them, because there is drama. There's plenty of drama there to mine. So ultimately, it comes down to I truly hate how they handled Vader here, and it's mostly summed up in, I think, the filmmaking. I love story, but also I love just the craft of filmmaking, just how a shot, when you shoot from this angle and you put in these sound effects and this music, it creates an emotion. It's just like all like the feelings we feel interacting with a movie are so often come down to, one, the story and acting, but also just techniques that they are employing. The reason the Death Star trench run in A New Hope is so exciting is the way it's cut. It's the way John Williams' score interacts with the imagery. Or just take your pick of a great Star Wars moment. It's well directed, probably. Exception of a couple pretty cool moments. But anyway, and my complaint with Obi-Wan Kenobi as a larger series, but specifically the Vader scenes, is that I think they're kind of badly directed. And I'm going to give some examples of that, and it's going to get technical, but I don't know how to really get across my critiques without getting technical. Yeah. I think Vader's first scene is interesting that way, because there are a lot of scenes in movies, but specifically in Star Wars, where you'll have the bad guys or even good people, and someone will hologram in and be threatening, or it'll be an uncomfortable interaction where you have a superior who's in power talking down to an inferior. Think the Emperor coming in and talking to Newt Gunray in The Phantom Menace, the Emperor and Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. The list goes on. Maul and Kira in the end of Solo. And you'll notice when you think about those scenes, almost always we see those sequences from the perspective of the person of the weaker party. Newt Gunray, Vader, Kira. And the threatening person the threatening person is calling in. And we stick with it with the perspective of the person receiving, and it's about their reactions, how their fear, how they react. And it makes the person in power feels remote, feels powerful. And they shoot this scene from Vader's perspective. Mm-hmm. And Reva is the one calling in. And I think the lighting is also bad and things like that. But I think that scene is ultimately robbed of its power because she shot it from the wrong angle. And it's just a weird thing like that, to where when the person from which you shoot that thing is defines how the power structure and power struggle of this interaction is happening. And by shooting it from Vader's perspective, it just feels confusing. I don't know the dynamics of power in that scene. And which is a problem. If Vader is in a scene, he is the one in control, and the visual language of how she shot that sequence is confusing. And I just spent the day kind of thinking about various sequences that I like this, and all of them kind of subscribe to my theory of that the person in power has to be calling in. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, it does. That makes a lot of sense. I totally
grab my power cord. Keep talking.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I understand your perspective there, and I actually I think you described that really well. The only thing that I would say that is to counter it, and the only thing I really can say, and it's not on a technical level, it's just the only thing I can say is that I know Vader, and I know because of the language of the show so far, and because of what I've seen in Star Wars so far, I know Vader, and I know Reva, and I know the power structure. And so when I saw this scene, I never once thought about that. I never once felt like this feels weird to me. I never once. I understand the criticism too of like that shot feeling. I've seen several people point out that shot specifically feels fan made. I guess I can see that to a degree, but like when I'm watching it, I'm just seeing Vader on his throne in Mustafar, and I'm there, and I can just speak from my experience, and it did not hit me that way. It hit me in a way. Every second that Vader was on the screen, he stole the show, and every word that he said, his lines were great. The way that it was delivered was great. It sounded better than it did in Rogue One, like technically to me. Like his voice sounded better, and I know there's some AI in there and all that stuff, but
James Earl Jones is credited. I've heard some people say that maybe it was entirely recreated the way they did Luke's voice. Mm-hmm. Other people say maybe it was just James Earl Jones recorded them and then they cleaned them up. But yeah, it sounded great.
It sounded great, man. It did. It felt like it sounded like younger Vader. It really did. And so I don't know, man. Like when every second Vader was on the screen, I'm just telling you, my experience watching it here in this room was just, it was intense, and I was here for almost all of it. And so, yeah, but dude, the way that you described that makes total sense to me from a technique perspective. But again, it didn't hit me that way. I get it, but it didn't hit me that way.
It's kind of the curse of learning more and more about filmmaking and film craft is when things are good, you enjoy it so much more. Than when things don't measure up to that. It's like
I get it, man.
Things that people who don't know that they can love it because they're seeing something on screen. But like, oh my gosh, that light is in the wrong place. What are they doing?
It's kind of this thing. Like, I'm a musician, man, and so like a lot of times I'm listening to music and people are freaking out over, and I'm like, why? I don't understand why people love this so much. I mean, I'm glad you do, but I don't. And then it's the same thing with like comic books. I actually haven't read hardly any comics, and I've viewed that lately as a positive. Because I can actually watch these MCU movies and not be like, well, in the comics, they did this and they did this differently and they should have done stuck to the comics. That kind of criticism gets on my nerves a lot of time because I'm like, well, the movies are different. And they should be different, by the way. Why would you want to see the exact same thing on the screen that you read in a book already? So, I just, I like having a certain level of ignorance, even though I don't want to be, an idiot. So
while we're on the subject, I mean, there's another filmmaking critique that I have because, like, again, this is the primary thing blocking me from enjoying the show. There's a scene, and there's GIFs and videos of it up on Twitter now. A scene where the first time Vader and Obi-Wan meet, like he ignites his lightsaber, and this has to do with like directions. Like Obi-Wan, he runs off screen this way, and then they cut back to Vader and cut back to what looks like the same angle, and Obi-Wan runs back on screen this way. So it looks like it's literally like a comedic technique where you'll have someone exit screen and then come back on screen. Like it's a comedic beat technique.
Yep.
And it's called the 180 line, where you basically you want to keep the directions going the same way. So if Obi-Wan ran off screen this way, next scene he needs to come in and keep going that way.
Yeah.
And it's called the 180 line. Yeah. It's more complicated than that. But it's like filmmaking technique 101. I don't understand. It's baffling to me. This is Lucasfilm. This is Disney. This is probably the biggest studio in existence right now as far as money they're making. I don't know how to not feel like personally offended as a viewer. I paid you my money. How could you not even? Why are you giving me this kind of thing? I don't know. It's just kind of ridiculous.
Dude, you've heard me talk about it, about my thoughts on this stuff. I saw that part in the when I watched it, and I noticed it. I was like, wait, did he come back? No, wait, where's Vader? I don't know. It did. You were right. It felt like a comedic, like he was coming back to say a joke or something. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm with you. I'm with you,
running the other way.
I'm with you. That was bad.
Okay.
I'm with you. That part took me out of it to where I had to be like, wait, I'm actually confused where Obi-Wan is and where Vader is right now.
Yeah, like, so that's the worst offender, but then there are like a lot of little things like that for me. Sure. But going back to some positives, for the first half of this episode, I thought I was going to like it even more than the first two. Mm-hmm. Just when it's just Obi-Wan and Leia kind of either wandering around the grass or riding in the back of the truck, just kind of having conversations. It's like, this is really sweet.
It was good, man.
And especially once it got to, or even in the opening where she asks, we get, because that's not how the Force works line. And then she asked, how does it feel? And his answer was, have you ever been afraid of the dark? How does it feel when you turn the light on? I feel safe. Yes, I feel like that.
That was so good, man.
A perfect Star Wars line. And like just there's stuff like that. And just the idea. Remember, you don't talk. Hi, I'm Luma. Just, the way she ignores every single direction he gives was funny. Then talking about her mother. Sometimes I see your mother's face. We all miss her very much. Just kind of getting that. Are you my real father? I wish I could say I was. Just it's so adorable.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. Their conversations that they were having, I was hanging on every single word. I actually forgot I forgot that the scene that you were talking about where he describes what the Force is like. I forgot that was in this episode because it was on the ship. And that's one of my favorite. You know, I go back to Obi-Wan talking to Luke in his hut at the beginning of A New Hope. I love when he talks about it there. I love when Yoda talks about it on Dagobah. I love when Ryan Johnson when
I love it when Ryan Johnson talks. Period.
I love yeah, when anything. I love it when Luke is telling Rey about what it's like, and then it goes through that montage of like these, like, you know, death, life, like all this stuff. I think this scene kind of goes up there in that echelon of when people are describing what the Force is like and how I react to it. I reacted in such a way that I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful," and so I loved it, man. It's so good.
Another positive I have, I like the idea of this kind of underground railroad that's been set up where they can, if they find a Force sensitive person, Jedi, child, anyone, they can kind of like funnel them out of the inner rim and get them, you know, to safety.
Really cool.
That was really cool.
I actually have a criticism here. Do you think that it's a smart idea for these Jedi that have been there to like carve their names on the walls? And like...
I thought that same thing. Like, yes, a top secret base with a full history of your crimes written on the wall. Yeah, good
like,
thinking.
In theory, like when I was watching the scene, I was like, "This is so cool. I love this." And I was like, "Wait, this is stupid. Why would they do this?"
How many people are going to be arrested?
It's blowing her cover so bad. And by the way, I love that character, Tala. I thought she was really great. I really liked her, and I liked her chemistry with Obi-Wan, just kind of on screen. I thought they were really great together.
Another great example of someone who bought into the lie of the Empire and joined them willingly, and then later learned the truth.
Yeah, and I like the dichotomy there too, because it's like we're seeing Obi-Wan, who to this point he's made these big mistakes, and he's just like sitting in them, in that shame, whereas, you know, Tala made these mistakes and she's doing something about it. She's doing something about it. And I like, we're kind of seeing that with different characters throughout the show, and eventually we're going to build up to where Obi-Wan does the same, and I'm really excited for it.
It feels like Obi-Wan's primary arc in this show is going to be learning to trust again. He keeps on yelling at Leia, you know, not everyone is good. What's her line from the previous episode? You know, why is it so hard to believe someone want to help you? And so I think, and then seeing all the carvings on the wall, how many, you know, all the good these people have done, you know, meeting a friend who saves his life in the end.
Yep.
I think that's going to be kind of his primary arc, is just, there are good people out there helping. Maybe I can do that as well. I mean, because that's essentially like he was in this position in the first episode. A Jedi came to him for help, and he had nothing to give.
Yep.
And now seeing someone probably in an even more difficult position than him, you know, this Imperial officer surrounded by stormtroopers, she's still helping, and you know, maybe I can as well. So I think that could be a good arc going forward.
Yep.
Anything else in particular that stood out to you before we get to kind of the climax?
You mean the climax of the episode or the climax of this episode?
This episode. Before we get to that, any other moments or scenes or themes or whatever that stuck out?
Man. Well, I'm glad I remembered to bring up Tala, because I really, really liked her character a lot. You know, I thought Reva was better in this episode. She was one of my criticisms before. It's not like I thought she was terrible, but I guess I didn't really feel like she was giving a very layered performance. I like the character. I like what the character is doing. I like the conflict between Inquisitors. I really love Sun Kang as an Inquisitor. I think he's great. I really do. And I like
his comeback. You know, I'll inform Lord Vader. He's already been informed. He was most appreciative. It's just you know, deliberately drawing that line out.
classic, dark side force user, rivalry going on. And I really liked that. And I thought Riva was really good. I thought she was more layered here. And I'm really curious how her interactions are going to go with Leia coming up going in the next episode. I'm not entirely sure that Riva's going to be a villain at the end of this show. And I don't know. I don't know why. Obviously there's a whole bunch of theories out there and all that. I don't know that I fully believe it, but I do wonder, like, I can see something where her, I don't know if she interacts with something about the way that maybe she finally meets up with Obi-Wan and he's not what she thought that he would be. In fact, like, in a good way. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Leia has a positive influence in over time by the end of the show. I don't know, man. I just kind of feel like this could be setting her up to ultimately, like, she's just a full-on villain and she's going to die that way in this show maybe. Or she could be in for a bit of a redemption here. And I feel like maybe spending some time with Leia might be just a first little step. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just curious of how this is going to go.
Yeah,
I don't have any full-on theories.
There's some possible implications that she was one of the younglings in the opening scene.
I took that as almost 100% that she was. Like, I'm pretty positive.
Yeah, I don't like Riva. I not because I think the character idea is sound. Like, I love that sense of infighting. I just don't like the performance, and there's a thing happening with the fandom. Ewan McGregor put out that message confronting some of the just vile racist comments. Obviously, I agree with all that. Of
course, yeah.
Like, even if they weren't racist, don't message the actor and tell them you didn't like. Why would you do that?
Man? Who does that, man? Like, you're the worst type of person to do that.
Yeah, like, I think she's giving a bad performance, but also I'm proud of Ewan McGregor for, like, she's part of his crew. You stick up for your crew. You don't throw them under the bus. So all of that. I'm glad he did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still don't like her.
Oh, by the way, did you see the Fandom Menace is totally review bombing this show, by the way?
That's not surprising at all.
Not at all.
Which is funny because I thought this was like going to be their big, last hope or whatever for Disney Star Wars, but I guess that didn't pan out. You're not going to get the paychecks, I guess, if you love something anymore.
Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah, so, like, that would be interesting. I don't entirely have confidence that Moses Ingram can pull off the kind of redemption, the kind of performance that the redemption arc would require. But maybe I did dislike her less this time around, so maybe she's just getting into the role. Maybe her and Chow are
she was either nominated,
syncing up more.
She was either nominated or she did win an Emmy for the Queen's Gambit, right? Was it the Queen's Gambit?
Wait, did you watch that?
I did not.
Was she the best friend? I think she might have been the best friend.
I didn't see the show, but I know she was either nominated or won an Emmy for that. So I have to believe, like, I actually saw more in this episode that was more layered, and I really thought that she was better in this one particular. But I don't know, man. I kind of have to. I have to believe that she's got it in her skill wise. I wonder if it was director choice mixed.
I think it's the volume. I think something about the volume is like returning us to the prequel era. We're like, these are great actors. These are one of our best actors. Like, why is Terrence Stamp wooden? Like, there's no logical explanation for this. Why is Sam Jackson giving these weird line readings? I feel like something about this kind of remote filmmaking is hurting performance.
Interesting.
I don't know. Like, because like that's the consistent thread across. I think Mando has a lot of like weird line readings. I think not that character, but just in the show. I think Boba Fett had a lot of weird performances. This one's having weird performances, and like the consistent thread is these were all shot in the volume. It's a lot of different filmmakers, a lot of different actors. So what's the consistent thread? That's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. So moving on to the final Vader confrontation. I feel like we have such polar opposite opinions. I did like the way he kind of just walks down the street, just torturing people, like, trying to bring a Jedi out of hiding. Like, that's very brutal, but probably effective technique. And then the stalking happens, and you've got the weird running off, running back on. And every moment of this confrontation felt to me like it was a fan film. It didn't feel like it was directed by a professional director with lots of money at their beck and call. And it's lighting, it's sound, it's performance, it's choreography, it's cinematography. Like it's just all the things were just less than I feel like they should have been, and just kind of I could never get into it because it never felt like I was watching an actual official Lucasfilm movie level production. And just like again, staging issues. I mentioned one. Another thing, like where he lights it on fire, drags everyone through it, and then what's Tala? Tala puts the fire out. Reignites it, and then Vader's like, "Oh, I can't. I just put out the fire 3 seconds ago, but now there's fire again, and so I'll just stand here and let him escape." Maybe it was like you said. Maybe it's like, "Oh, this is just depressing. I'm going to let you go and heal and recover. Then we'll fight again, make this better." Maybe it was like that, but I feel like just the way these scenes are set up. The obstacle they put in Vader's way was not believable at all as something that would stop him from killing the person he hates most in the galaxy. Just things like that are constantly happening to where they're taking me out, just making me irritated and confused.
Yeah. Obviously I disagree, but I see what you're saying there. Even if personally, when I was watching it, that's how I took it. I took it as, this has been pathetic, that I don't want to beat you in this shape. Like, I really don't. This is, the way that Vader is, it's kind of on brand for him. And so for me, I kind of feel like that's how I could explain it to myself. That's how I read it. But I also see your point. Like, they could have left this up for people to see it the way I did, or they could have made it make sense where they could have had an obstacle there that was too much for Vader to get through for some, like they're in like an industrial area of this planet. Like there's equipment and stuff. I don't know. They could have done something. I'm with you. They could have done something better there, I guess.
Could have dropped an ATST on him like they did in Rebels.
That would have been sick. And then and then they could do the same kind of thing like in Rebels, because it gives them time to escape, but you also see Vader lifting it up. that would have been great. Listen, I don't know. I love it. I like the way the sabers sound. I think they sound so good, and I think they look great. I think that I like the lighting on the faces of like the blue and the red. It didn't feel fan made to me when I was watching it. I genuinely was like, I keep saying this, and this is just because it's the way it hit me. When I was watching this episode, I was like at the edge of my seat and genuinely terrified because of Vader, and also like, I have to see what happens here. And also kind of, it was heartbreaking to see Obi-Wan rolling around in those flames like that. Like it was disturbing to me. And so like I think this is where you and I are going to differ the most, is because you want to sit here and watch and feel the things that they want you to feel, and you're not feeling them. Whereas I'm feeling them. I felt the emotion of Obi-Wan in episode 1 of this show, when he was all alone on Tatooine. I felt all of that. And like, I've just been hooked on this show ever since. And in this scene, I felt all of that when Obi-Wan's rolling around. And even when Obi-Wan is like, Vader's just doing his one hand thing, and Obi-Wan is using 2 hands, and he's just like so weak. He's so weak, and he's a shell of himself. And I truly believe we're gonna get another fight, and I truly believe this wasn't even Obi-Wan versus Vader. This is like some old hermit versus Vader. This is not the Obi-Wan that we know. It's not the Obi-Wan that Vader knows, and we're gonna get that. And I'm excited for it, man.
It needs to have a Rocky training montage. In episode 4, he's off somewhere healing, doing the montage, building up his strength. It's gonna be a rematch. It's gonna go down differently.
Would it be like Eye of the Tiger music or something?
Exactly. So some kind of Star Wars, jazz band doing something.
Max Rebo band.
Yeah. So like I think on paper, I think they did all the right things. Like the tone of the conversation, I think was the correct. They were going for was the correct one. Just lines like, what happened to you? I am what you made me.
Oh man. Oh.
Very good. Again, getting revenge, dragging to the fire. I think very good thematic idea, execution, that kind of thing. So,
excellent.
Yeah, I feel like if I read the synopsis, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. So, I guess thematically they're on point, and I was, I think, maybe going back to maybe having a bit more hope for the future of the series is that I was feeling Obi-Wan much more emotionally in the first half of this episode when it's quiet moments, like when it's just two actors talking to each other. Because these big scenes require so much technical stuff that I felt wasn't there. When it's just two people talking, I feel like the series can sort of deliver in those moments. And I think Ewan is very good.
Dude, he's great. Green screen, real place, the volume, anywhere you put him, Ewan's great.
Yeah. So one thing that I do want to get your kind of perspective on this, where Jeff in the live chat asked, how do they reestablish Obi-Wan and Vader's interaction in A New Hope? I guess what he thinks but I think he means is, because of that line, when I left, I was but the learner, now I am the master. How do you reconcile that with knowing that they met and that Vader already kicked Obi-Wan's butt really bad? How does that line now make sense for you? For me, I'm like, it doesn't. I hate it. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, to me, there's so much room in that line, because to me, it's not literally the last time that I saw you and I physically left you, I was but the learner. I take it as when I left you, as in when I disaligned myself with you, I was but the learner. Now I'm the master. And so you could see, you can see, he could still see him 10 years later, and that line still means the same thing to me, because he hasn't been with Obi-Wan. When I left you, meaning when I left your side, when we were together and now we're not, in our fight, I was but the learner. I think there's so much room to play there. I think that's way more of a, I don't think that's literally last time that I saw you and I left you, then I was but the learner. I don't think that's, I don't take it, I don't need it to mean that. It could mean that, but it could also mean, I was, when we were on the same side, I was the learner. Now I'm the master. I can take it that way too. And it's not even
kind of the master as he's dragging him through the fire. Like, isn't he kind of the master there already? I don't know. It feels like a bit of a reach for me.
But again, you're saying you're still thinking of it as when I physically left your presence last. That's not.
I was thinking more of but now I am the master. Whereas you've been the master for 10 years at least, because you kicked his butt last time.
I have a problem. I mean, no, I'm sorry, not a problem. I have a feeling we're gonna get another fight with him, and I think it's gonna go much better for Obi-Wan this time. I'm not saying he's gonna just straight up beat him. I think it's gonna be a much better fight, and I think Obi-Wan is going to. I think it's gonna be much better. I don't think it's gonna feel this way.
Except, I feel like Vader needs to end this series thinking Obi-Wan is dead, because I do not believe if Vader thought Obi-Wan was alive, I feel like he would tear up the entire galaxy to find and kill him. That's how he's been presented in basically every single book, comic, show, anything out there. If Vader knew Obi-Wan was alive, I feel like he would find and kill him. I feel like he has to believe he's dead by the end of it.
Maybe. It could be. I don't know. All I know is right now that line has room to play. Like you could take that literally or figuratively.
Does
to
it
me.
though?
Oh yeah, it totally does, man. So much room to play.
Don't break your arm with that reach, man. I don't know.
I don't feel like I'm reaching at all.
So how are you feeling about, I guess, the future of the show going forward? I left last episode thinking what is this show going to be? And I'm still kind of feeling like that. What do you think? What story do you think they're going to be telling for the next half of the series?
Yeah, I think they're going to be telling. Part of the reason I like this show is I have really no idea. From the first episode when Leia showed up on Alderaan, I was like, wait, what? Okay. So this is what I've had no idea what was going to happen. I figured we would have seen Vader at like episode 4 or 5. So we've already seen him in all of his glory way early, and we really saw him. So man, I kind of love that I don't have any real theories to go on, but if I'm really thinking about it, I'm definitely expecting, Obi-Wan to get back to the Obi-Wan that we know in A New Hope. I'm expecting that transformation to happen, at least for him to get back on that path, because we still got 9 years till A New Hope, so he's gonna at least get back on that path and find peace again, and I believe that Qui-Gon is going to play a role in that. I think we're going to see Qui-Gon. They're hinting at it, to the point where
hinting with a sledgehammer.
If he doesn't show up, it's going to be a massive failure on their part. They're teasing us at this point. And so I expect Qui-Gon to show up. I expect that to be part of his development in this, and I expect to sob my eyes out during that scene. But
my only worry is that, Liam Neeson very much looks like a 70-year-old man now, and their de-aging has been inconsistent.
Well, listen, de-aging and Force Ghost, you can, I don't know, I feel like you can hide things, and
the voice will also be interesting.
Plus, the de-aging in the Book of Boba Fett was much improved. From what it was in The Mandalorian, even though I have issues with the whole. I feel like they should just recast. I have issues with not having a real performance instead, with what they did with Luke. Mm-hmm. I have problems with that. It doesn't feel. I have a hard time connecting with that. But it looked really weirdly good.
Yeah, that modulation, it sounds perfect, but there's no inflection.
It sounds a little robotic, and I can't connect with it as much as some people did. And as good as that episode was of the Book of Boba Fett, that does mess with me. And so anyway, they could do something similar with Qui-Gon as a Force ghost, and it wouldn't bother me nearly as much. And also because I know the character's dead, and they're not gonna, So
the funny thing is, they just had the announcement from Star Wars Celebration that Liam Neeson's going to be returning to voice Qui-Gon, and that his son is going to voice a young, maybe not child, but a young teenage Qui-Gon.
So cool.
Maybe they can blend that together.
Yep.
He's done voice acting, so maybe he can modulate his voice to make himself sound younger.
He came back for the Clone Wars, and with that Yoda art.
That was him?
That was him. That was actually him.
Why does they think he was a voice actor? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm 99% positive. You only have me questioning it 1% now, but no, I'm pretty sure that's him. That's him. He came back for it, and he sounded great. So no, man, if Qui-Gon shows up as a Force ghost when he does, I really think that between the fact that the de-aging has gotten better, and the fact that he'll be a Force ghost, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how that scene would go. It would be really cool if we could see Qui-Gon absolve Obi-Wan of a little bit of that guilt, as in I made this choice. I put it on you when you were young, you were not ready. You were great, you were a good man, but you were still young. You weren't ready to take on such a difficult person. It's not all your fault.
Dude, have you ever read the A Certain Point of View book before?
I've forgotten almost all the details. I just remember I loved the Obi-Wan story.
There is a scene in there with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. It's actually called it's by Claudia Gray, and it's called Master and Apprentice. Mm-hmm. And I guess that came before the actual novel. But this short story between them, that's kind of similar to what happens, although it's not the first time they've seen each other. It's the first time that Qui-Gon has brought that up, but he talks very similar to how you are. If I can see that on screen, I would love it. Yeah, it's beautiful. I just
something about I feel like there's been so few lengthy conversations in this show. I feel like the conversations I love are just like a quote, a snippet. I really hope that Joby Harold, the writer, can get them to just stop. Give us 10 minutes
Sit in it for a
of
while.
real character dialogue and emotion. You don't. That's what Star Wars is like. Half of Empire Strikes Back is a boy and a puppet sitting in a mud hut,
Yep.
talking to each other.
Yep.
Like Star Wars is action, it's adventure, it's explosions, but also it's the people.
Yeah. I totally agree, man. Yeah, absolutely.
So
What's so funny is you and I actually really agree on what we like about Star Wars. It's so funny how vehemently opposed we are on this show.
Yeah.
But I also like that we can talk about it. This is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's much more pleasant disagreeing with you than some people out there. All right. Anything else at all you wanted to mention before we kind of close this out?
This is the best show ever. I'm just kidding. No, it's not. No, I really love it. I'm very excited to see where it goes. And yeah, man, I think we've talked about pretty much everything about this episode. I very much enjoyed it. And I think if I was to rank the episodes, I still think the first one is my favorite. It just really, the first one really hit me in all the feels. But then I would put this one right behind it. And then episode 2.
The first one is the one I dislike the least. Yeah,
It's your favorite one.
I've kind of given up hope, for this series. As in, like, I fully expect there to be great moments, great scenes, great bits here and there. But it's kind of like, I know it's the same writer, I know it's the same director for the next 3 episodes.
Yeah, and
I feel like there's very much a cap on what I expect this show can achieve, and it's pretty low, sadly.
Well, you brought that up last week. When I was listening to you and Drew talk, you brought that up. How it's like, well, at least with like The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, you have that hope that like maybe next week can be better because they have a different director and a different, like, you know what I mean? Like you may not like this episode that was directed by, I don't know, Dave Filoni, but you really but next week we got Rick Famuyiwa directing, and so it's always, or you don't know that, I guess, until it happens. But I mean, we agree on him, man. His episodes are so freaking good.
Rick Famuyiwa is now an executive producer on the entire series. They saw that. They're bringing him on. Hopefully he's going to write a lot more too.
I hope so. I hope he writes and still directs. I still want him to be hands-on with all this. I'm sure he will.
Yeah. But I was really rooting for him to do Ahsoka. Hopefully he has an episode or 2.
Dude, if he directs some Ahsoka, that would be so good. Also Andor. I want him to do some Andor as well. Or is that just the same? Is that the similar thing?
He's not doing Andor is like entirely different. Like, I don't think it was shot in the volume. Tony Gilroy's the showrunner. I don't think Filoni or Favreau have any say over that show.
So is it just 1 or 2 directors for the whole thing? Is it?
I think it's 4. I think it's like 4. It's a lot more like a normal TV show.
Gotcha.
Where it's a lot of TV, like a really professional TV directors. Whereas kind of
right.
The Mandalorian was just like, hey, Favreau's like, hey, I like you. You want to direct an episode? It's kind of like a really weird amalgamation of people.
Some good ones though.
Yeah. And some not good ones. But yeah, so like, yeah, I'm so excited for Andor. I can talk about Andor, but we gotta move on.
Hey, we agree. That's my most anticipated now.
It's funny. I was just before we did this, I was listening to an old interview with Gilroy, and they asked him, "Would you do a Star Wars movie?" He's like, "No, I don't care about Star Wars. I don't even like Star Wars. Whatever." But somehow they got him back for this. For Andor.
So funny.
Which is part of why I'm so excited for it. I think there's something cool about a non-fan coming in and just telling a good story.
Dude, I totally agree. You don't have to be a good fan to make a good story in that world. I think that's a myth.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we head out, I want to give you a chance to plug your show, where can people find you and all that.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. So my podcast is called A Certain Point of View. We have an episode a week generally. I'm a parent now, so sometimes it's a little less, but we are doing review episodes on Obi-Wan. After that, I mean, there's so much Star Wars content coming up we will be covering, but we also do deep dive episodes and ranking episodes and stuff like that. Just lots of fun stuff. We got me, Josh Mesker, who is obviously an admin over here, and then we have Curry Morris, Drew Miller, and Jessica McNair, my co-host, and we kind of rotate in and out, but it's really fun over there. You can follow us on Twitter at certain_POV pod, and Instagram and TikTok we are at certain point of view pod. So you go follow us there. That'd be great.
All right, and you'll come join us in the Outer Rim, a Star Wars group on Facebook. All positive, constructive conversation, none of the crazy hate and all that. Check us out on YouTube as well, the Outer Rim, a Star Wars channel. Like this video, subscribe over there. And we will be back next Thursday with our review of Part 4. See ya.